On today's show, we interview the man who is credited as being the inventor of the first camera phone. His name is Philippe Kahn, and he's a very good friend of the co-founder of Netflix. In fact, Marc Randolph, the co-founder of Netflix, said that Philippe Kahn has been one of the biggest mentors in his life. And so he joins us on today's show to discuss how you and I should be reacting to the coronavirus.
The best approach may be to find out, what the deaths are and what the recoveries are. And I think the recovery is very important because it's what promotes herd immunity.
Yep.
And so the concept of herd immunity is the most people had it and recovered, the less likely they are to pass it on to someone who hasn't had it. So you protect the weaker. And that's exactly what the people in Sweden have been doing. And a lot of more countries like Denmark and Norway, et cetera, are aligning themselves on that idea. Because if you keep everybody at home, no one gets it. Yes, you flatten the curve, but when everybody gets out of home, because eventually it's going to happen, everybody's going to get it, and it's going to be dramatic. So you haven't solved any problem. All you did is delay the problem.
Philippe Kahn is a successful entrepreneur who's built 4 multi-million-dollar companies that have done very, very well. Very successful companies. He's also a mathematician. He's also a technology innovator and a pioneer of wearable technology. And I asked him today how you and I should be responding to these predictions that 2.2 million Americans might die from the coronavirus, and now they're being adjusted to say that maybe 61,000 people may die from the coronavirus.
I think it's just statistics, and it's no different than polls. Statisticians, epidemiologists are statisticians. Just like the polls that predicted that Hillary Clinton would win and she lost were wrong, and this is exactly the same case.
He's also a man who's into polyphasic sleeping, just like Thomas Edison and the founder of WordPress, Matt Mullenweg.
Oh, absolutely right. Yeah, this is polyphasic sleep. And so you count the number of phases of sleep you're in, and you try not to slow to another one.
And now it's on with Philippe Kahn.
Some shows don't need a celebrity narrator to introduce the show, but this show does. 2 men, 8 kids, co-created by 2 different women, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thrive Time Show.
Now, 3, 2, 1, here we go!
Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom.
Yes, and yes. Thrive Nation, on today's show, we are interviewing the inventor of the first camera phone and a very good friend of the co-founder of Netflix, Marc Randolph. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I introduce to you Philippe Kahn. Welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thank you very much. Glad that I can be here and from beautiful Santa Cruz.
Now, I understand that you are the man who is credited as being the inventor of the camera phone. Where did you first have the idea to invent the camera phone?
Well, I started by thinking that it was key to create a new media that would instantly be able to point, shoot, and share pictures, and that was about the beginning of 1997, when there was no really service like that, and phones weren't connected to cameras, and nothing really worked. So I started working on a server-based solution that resembled very much what Facebook is today, and then there's a bit of serendipity here. As we were going to the maternity with my wife, we're expecting a little girl called Sophie. She's also kind of a technology enthusiast like I am, and so she advised me to take my soldering iron and the cameras and et cetera. And it turns out that we were at the maternity, and her labor lasted for 18 hours. It was
Whoa.
a long labor, and there was a desk over there, and I was able to put it all together in those 18 hours, and that's a bit of serendipity and a little bit of foresight by spending 7-8 months building the server infrastructure for it.
You built the phone during the 18-hour. I want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding that. You took 18 hours and built it during that window of time?
I didn't build the phone. I took the most popular, the first digital camera of the time, the Casio QV10, and a Motorola StarTAC, as well as a Toshiba Portagé laptop, and was able to connect everything so that wirelessly I could basically transmit instantly pictures to over 2,000 friends and family people and share them instantly. And the idea was that because the bandwidth was so limited at the time, kind of what people experience when everybody's watching Netflix or something like that at the same time, what I built is a system where you uploaded the picture for the first on the server, and the server sent link backs to the picture to a whole list of friends and family, 2,000 of them, without having to send pictures to everyone. Exactly what happens with Facebook, Instagram, and all these social networks.
You are obviously an accomplished man, but if I could, I'd like to go back to the very beginning and to what I've read about your upbringing. I understand that you were raised by Jewish immigrants of a pretty modest means, and that your mother, Claire, was actually an Auschwitz survivor from the Holocaust. Am I getting that right, sir?
Yeah, you get that right. She was a professional concert violinist, and she survived the Holocaust by playing in the Auschwitz Women's Orchestra. So she was, she definitely was a survivor, and she was a professional musician, and she raised me as a single mom, and making a living as a musician.
How did your mother, being raised in the horrific environment of Auschwitz, impact how she raised you? Did she ever speak about it or no?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was her friends. She was also part of the French resistance. She was a lieutenant in French resistance. So she, all her friends were, we had a very small place, but they would all get together. And I think, I was a little bit young. She passed away when I was 14 years old. I was a little bit young to understand that, and a little stupid like most teenagers. And so I didn't have enough time to talk to her, but we talked a lot, and I met a lot of her friends before and after. And I think they were very busy trying to find the perpetrators, and she was pretty involved in some I would call hunting and stuff like that. She passed away being hit by a car, and it never was really clear how that happened and what happened. But she was a great person, and she was buried with military honors as a lieutenant in French resistance, and had the Medal of the French Resistance. So I'm very proud of her, and that was her story. And it wasn't a horrible upbringing. It was the opposite. She was a very positive person, and she always thought that tomorrow was going to be better than yesterday. And I think that carried her through, and it's a great philosophy.
I want to ask you this. I don't know that I've ever had a guest on the show that I've been able to ask this question to, so I'll give it a whirl here. People look back at times of like Auschwitz and Nazi-occupied Germany, and they would say, well, that could never happen now, or I can't believe that happened then. What was wrong with those people then? How could people possibly do that to people then? What have you learned about the cause of the absolute horrible, horrific acts committed of crimes and genocide about the Nazis? And maybe what advice would you have for our listeners out there to make sure that kind of thing never happens again?
Well, human nature is human nature. What happened is that misery and desperation pushes people to find scapegoats. And, Jews traditionally have been, great scapegoats. And, it's just unfortunate. And, we all work very hard to make sure that nothing like that happens again. But if you look at the world today, it's a very challenging world. And in fact, this pandemic could trigger a lot of desperation. And, people are losing lives, but they're also losing their livelihoods. And people haven't realized that at first. It was kind of a novelty, but, stay at home and all that. But there's a lot of people who need to make a living. There's people for whose life hasn't changed because they were, working from home already and writing or doing stuff like that. But most, I grew up in a blue-collar family. I was the first person in my family to ever graduate from high school. And so, what I know is that if you can't work, then there's trouble. You can't put bread on the table.
Yeah.
And that's the case for a lot of the population. And if that continues to happen, then desperation pushes people to do stupid things. And I think that human nature is that way. And it's really unfortunate. It's a story of the poachers in Africa who will kill the last rhino, although they know that that's, their world and their environment, but, they want to put food on the table, or they have that greed and they do something stupid. And the same thing is true. And hopefully the same thing won't happen. But that's really the balancing act that needs to happen between, in this case of the pandemic, between sheltering people and developing, what's called herd immunity and letting people go back to their livelihood in some way and in some progressive way, or else, we could see a lot of desperation and crazy times reappear where people are held accountable, responsible, wrongly so, for something that's horrible for everybody. And then it degenerates in some incredibly stupid acts.
Philippe, have you been following the coronavirus spread?
Yeah, quite a bit, because my business is in what we do. We're a Medtech company, and what we do is we monitor remotely vital signs. So we're the leaders for biosensing and remote biosensing, and so we're trying to help save lives by providing systems that adapt to telehealth and help people diagnose or actually positively reinforce the fact that people are healthy without having to visit a medical practice and all that, and automatically taking measurements such as blood pressure, blood composition, SpO2, et cetera. So we're very involved in that in that side of the business. So we follow the evolution of things, and because we have a cloud-based systems and we have a lot of analytical tools based on artificial intelligence that we use to actually do some triage, we're able to put out some demographic information. For example, give you an example of something we put out publicly recently.
Yeah.
We found out by monitoring people's sleep, over 500,000 nights of sleep, not just an anecdotal study that you see where people say we ask 1,000 people whether they sleep better or worse. This is like scientifically measured sleep. And we found that people on the average, since the shelter in place, have been sleeping longer. However, they are getting more REM sleep, which is, the dream phase of sleep. But in absolute terms, they're getting much less deep sleep, which is a restorative sleep, and it's really all tied to stress and what's going on, and it's a very powerful signpost of the psyche, the general psyche of a lot of people, where we're very worried about something, we have to sleep more, but the stress is more, and it's a very fascinating, metric to watch. But at the same time, it should ring alarm bells, because you can't do that forever, because the level of stress increases. Of course, it takes the immune system down. The immune system down means that you're much more likely to be a victim of COVID-19.
Now, I want to tap into your wisdom here, because you're such a fascinating individual, and I want to make sure I pick your brain if I can. Did you see the Stanford report that came out that showed that Santa Clara County, the COVID-19 cases could be 50 to 85 times higher than reported. Did you see that at all? Have you looked at that yet, sir?
Yeah, I have indeed. And here's the challenge. I can tell you what we know.
Yeah.
We're involved in medical devices, and some of this get manufactured in China.
Got it.
And so there's two sides with those tests. Yeah, you receive all these tests from China. We've had it for a while. We've been looking at them. They're unreliable, number one. Number two, they're very difficult for a private individual to administer to themselves unless they're used to sampling their blood, like, for example, they're diabetic or something like that, and they're used to measuring their blood glucose and all that. It's actually something that's not obvious to people. And then even if it's performed by a medical practitioner, they're not really reliable. We're looking at the new tests that will be more reliable, that will be made here in the U.S., and that will be FDA cleared, which is not the case with all these Chinese tests, or most of them. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is most people don't get tested. Most people go through this with very minimum symptoms. And so it's a very interesting thing, because we don't really know. We have one of our team members in our company, Full Power, that has a toddler that's 7 months old, and he and his toddler both had COVID-19. He's actually in New York, and he was told to stay at home. And he asked for a test, and they said, you don't need a test unless your symptoms get worse. This whole idea of testing everyone is kind of a bit ludicrous, because it's not easy to test, and most people go through this with minimal symptoms. In his case, he really had, kind of flu-like symptoms, which passed, and his toddler actually it was a little tougher on him, and he ended up treating him with Tylenol, et cetera. Like any new father and mother, they were a little panicked and called, hospitals and all that. And they said, no, stay at home. It's the best thing you can do unless it gets really critical. So the whole idea of testing people and finding out who does things and who does not things, I think is maybe not the best approach. The best approach may be to find out, what the deaths are and what the recoveries are. And I think the recovery is very important, because it's what promotes herd immunity. Yeah. And so the concept of herd immunity is the most people had it and recovered, the less likely they are to pass it on to someone who hasn't had it. So you protect the weaker. And that's exactly what the people in Sweden have been doing. And a lot of more countries like Denmark and Norway, et cetera, are aligning themselves on that idea. Because if you keep everybody at home, no one gets it. Yes, you flatten the curve, but when everybody gets out of home, because eventually it's going to happen, everybody's going to get it, and it's going to be dramatic. So you haven't solved any problem. All you did is delay the problem, unless, of course, a new vaccine comes out or a therapy. But that's not immediately in the future, or
right.
I hope it is, but there's nothing that indicates that.
Sir, I want to make sure the listeners understand your educational background. Can you share where you studied?
I studied both in Zurich and at the Federal Technical Institute, which is a Swiss university that's very famous for being the school at which Einstein studied, and Einstein taught, as well as von Neumann and people like it. It's one of the. It's only a technical university. Unlike it's more like Caltech than Stanford. They don't do anything that's not technical. It's a great university. I was very fortunate to make it. It's a very competitive way to get in. So I was very lucky to make it in there. And then I also studied in France, and I got a master's in mathematics, started to do a PhD in mathematics, but then realized that, my talents were more in writing software. And so I started doing that and selling my software. And then I moved to the U.S. I moved to Silicon Valley, really.
Philippe, I want to ask you this, and you can correct me if my timeline is off at all. I'm not trying to paint you into a corner. I just want to tap into your wisdom because this is so powerful. I've been tracking this coronavirus thing, not because I'm an expert of infectious disease, but because I run businesses and I'm and I'm an American, and I'm deeply concerned about the health of our people as well as businesses. And I found that Neil Ferguson originally predicted, he's the director of the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute for Disease and Emergency Analytics. He initially projected 2.2 million American deaths and then 500,000 deaths in the United Kingdom. And then Dr. Deborah Birx, who's been leading this fight against the coronavirus, I'm going to cue up an audio clip. I'm going to pull your mic down real quick, and I'm going to pull her audio up. And I would just like to see if you could break down what she's saying, because so many of our listeners out there own businesses, and maybe they don't understand what she's saying. So I'm going to play the audio for you, sir, and I'd love to have you break it down if you could. Here we go.
Okay.
Let me cue it up.
I'm sure many of you saw the recent report out of the UK about them adjusting completely their needs. This is really quite important. If you remember, that was the report that said there would be 500,000 deaths in the UK and 2.2 million deaths in the United States. They've adjusted that number in the UK to 20,000. So 500,000 to 20,000. We're looking into this in great detail to understand that adjustment.
So what I'm hearing is they initially predicted 2.2 million American deaths and 500,000 United Kingdom deaths. And if you took that number and you said now they're expecting 20,000 deaths in the UK, that would mean we'd be expecting about 88,000 deaths in America, worst case scenario. What were you hearing, sir, when you heard the correction about the report, or how do you process that?
I think it's just statistics, and it's no different than polls. Epidemiologists are statisticians. Just like the polls that predicted that Hillary Clinton would win and she lost were wrong, and this is exactly the same case. When you make a prediction, it's not an absolute number; it's a probability. And I think that a lot of people, here's one of my interpretations of it. If you're in the business of making health predictions, if you make a prediction, you say 20,000 will die and 500,000 died, you're a villain for the rest of your life. If you say we think that 500,000 will die, but only now we corrected 20,000, you're a great person for the rest of your lives. And I think, people tend to try to look good. That's the first thing. The second thing is the media is making a fortune of this because everybody's glued to cable TV and all that stuff. And I mean, there's never been as much paying attention to the media and obsession to it. And I think that the more sensational everything is and the more clicks people get, the more money they make. And it's unfortunate because, it probably doesn't play into the hands of something that's scientifically fair and balanced, and that makes sense. So, people go to the extremes of oh my God, what's going to happen, because that's what sells clicks.
I was looking at your career in preparation to interview you, and Marc Randolph, the co-founder of Netflix, he just could not say enough great things about you. How did you first meet Marc?
I think Marc interviewed in our company. We were pioneering selling professional development tools directly to consumers, and Marc is the ultimate direct person. And in fact, he showed that by his success at Netflix after Borland. And I met him, interviewed him, and immediately said, he knows what he's doing. And he had this very, very scientific, rigorous approach to say, hey, let's not argue whether this is right or not. Let's test it. And the concept of testing and letting the data speak is basically a scientific, approach. And this is exactly what Marc did, and how he thinks of marketing and direct sales, et cetera, is like, it doesn't pay to spend a lot of time making theories and talking about it. It's much better to test it, see if it works on a small sample, and then send the sample and then use it. And I was really loved what he did, and we got along just fine and had a great success together.
Can you share what Borland did, the company that you founded? I believe you founded the company in 1982. Could you share with the listeners what Borland did?
Well, at the time, I had just immigrated in the U.S., and I was in the tools business, so it's a very technical thing. We started by building development tools. The equivalent for software is machine tools are for cars and all that. First, before you can make a car, you need to make the machine tools that'll make the part that makes the car. And so that's exactly what Borland did. It built tools for software developers, and we build great tools. And one of the reasons is because that's my background, software development. So I build. I managed building tools that I could use myself, and that in turn was very exciting to the development community, who was using much less sophisticated tools. And with the genius of people like Marc Randolph in terms of direct marketing, we're able to offer them at a better price, at a better conditions, with better support than any other company, and that was the success of Borland.
Did you ultimately sell Borland there, sir, or what happened with Borland for the listeners out there that aren't familiar with Borland?
The company built tools and also built the first desktop organizers and all that. And we were a strong competitor to Microsoft at the time. In 1992-93, the web appeared, the internet appeared, and we were a public company, and as a CEO of the company, I wanted to make sure that Borland was positioned as the leader for web tools, and my board disagreed, and a CEO and the board of directors disagree. Then obviously you part ways. So we parted ways, and I started a new company. Borland continued for many years, and now is part of a development tools company called Micro Focus that makes professional software development tools and maintains it and all that. But then when I left Borland, I started a new company called Starfish that pioneered wireless synchronization of devices, et cetera, with Bluetooth, et cetera. And that company got acquired by Motorola at the time. And then, of course, because Motorola got acquired by Google eventually, a lot of the IP in that company ended up there. And then after that company was acquired, we created the first camera phone. And with the first camera phone, we built a new company called LightSurf Technologies, and we licensed that infrastructure to a lot of companies around the world, carriers in the U.S., as well as the first picture mail solution in Japan with JPhone. And so that company again got acquired later, and then after that, I was fortunate enough to start a new company called Full Power, which is my company presently, and we're the leaders for contactless biosensing and remote telemedicine using contactless biosensing. And so we're very fortunate to have the opportunity to help save lives and be involved in helping, hopefully, control the coronavirus in our small space, but make a difference. And that's very gratifying because, in this environment, we are an essential business. We are going 24/7 and have a fantastic team that's trying to help save lives, basically, in this situation, and hopefully improve the outcomes of this pandemic.
When you have exited your companies, did you ever get like one major paycheck? I'm not asking how much money you got or anything, but did you ever get one check where you said, whoa, because you grew up poor? I mean, did you ever get one check where you thought to yourself, thank you, Lord, that was nice? Did you ever get that big check?
No, I never did. Money was never my motivator.
Yep.
I'm an inventor and a technologist, so my focus is to make a difference, to help people around us. We have a foundation that we do that we we did okay, and
Yeah.
I have nothing to complain about. But money is never my focus. My focus is my passion, which is invention and making a difference and help people lead a better life. I mean, we all have different goals. You know, some people, they want to be the wealthiest person around or whatever. I have zero interest in that. In fact, you know, I'm more interested in leading a simple life, but doing what I'm passionate about.
I absolutely love that. I love that. Now I have some questions for you here. Most of our listeners are business owners, all right? So they're business owners, and they love to read. Could you list out a book or two, or maybe a few books that you would say, if you're listening right now, you need to read this book? Again, mostly entrepreneurs out there, people that own a business. I'd say the average listener has about 50 to 200 employees. That's probably the average. What are some books you'd recommend there, sir?
There's only one, but that might be controversial, but I will put it together. My favorite business book is Darwin's The Origin of the Species. That's my favorite one.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because when you run a business, it's an evolutionary situation. Darwin never said that the species that survive are the strongest, or the fittest, or the smartest. What Darwin said is that the species that survive are the ones that are the most responsive to change. And I always transliterate that to saying the businesses that do well are the ones that are most responsive to change. Unless, of course, you have a monopoly or something like that, and that's a different case. But for most of us, I mean, I've started and built 4 different companies that have been successful. I always look at Darwin's book as the key. I'm saying, am I building the business today that, given the conditions, is responsive to the change in the market and the opportunity and the technology? And so automatically, I think that's the thing that I think about the most every day, which is responsiveness to change and constantly reprioritizing. So if there's one book I would recommend, and one study is Darwin, and not as much because of the biological side. And I know, you know, some people believe in evolution and others don't. It's more of the fact that it applies. You know, someone needs to write a book modeled after Darwin that says, you know, responses to change is what counts when you are an entrepreneur in a small business. Response
to change is what counts. Making a note here.
Yeah, being responsive to change, that's really what counts. And by the way, that's true in personal lives too, you know.
Yep. You know, you have been around Silicon Valley for a long time. And I, have read about it from afar. I'm in Oklahoma, not necessarily known for technology. Maybe we're known for agricultural technology. I'm not sure, but I'm here right in the middle of America, and I've read about some of these people. I've read about Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Atari. I've read about Steve Jobs. I've read about all these different big names, Ben Horowitz. Who are some of the folks that you spent time with throughout your career that you've been most impressed with? People that you've thought, wow, that was a brilliant woman or a brilliant man, or who has amazed you with their mind?
Well, I'm the wrong person to ask.
Okay.
Because I'm mostly impressed by technologists, and a lot of the names you put forward are essentially people who are, Silicon Valley has a core technology, but a lot of Silicon Valley, what it's done in the last 30 years, is really marketing centric and knowing how to position from a marketing wise. I mean, Apple didn't invent anything. They borrowed from Xerox PARC. I mean, and the same is true for game companies, et cetera. They're great at marketing and technical marketing and doing that. So my heroes are more people like who were good friends, like Marvin Minsky, who passed away, who was one of the inventors of artificial intelligence. David Liddell, who ran Xerox PARC, and maybe Alan Kay, as well as the current AI leaders right now who just got recognized, people like Jan LeCun and et cetera. Those are my friends and seem to be the people that I get along the most with. I have a lot of respect for Steve Jobs. I was friendly with him and all that, but he's more of a marketing person than he was a technical person. And being an inventor and a technical person and an entrepreneur myself, I tend to gravitate towards the names that I mentioned before.
Are you at all, or I guess, are you worried about AI, or is there any kind of technology right now that's on the horizon that worries you?
I'm never worried about things like that. I'm one who believes in progress, and I believe that tomorrow is going to be better than today, even if today looks pretty bad.
Yeah.
And something good will happen from it. I think some of the issues with AI are important structural issues. As robotics get powered by AI, as more and more of the things that we do get replaced by AI-based system, which is one of the things we do in my company, Full Power, these days, then the nature of the kind of jobs that people can do will shift. And so they promote radical changes in society, but you still have to fix your sink. You still have to build somehow a car. You still have to, there's a lot that you still need to do, and robotics can't do everything. And I think that it's really important to think about the shifts rather than the disasters, because you can't do things like we were doing them in the 19th century, or even the assembly line by Henry Ford. We're having people doing these continually repetitive things that make no sense, and that's kind of being a slave of the factory. But at the same time, some jobs are going to shift, and some skills are going to shift. When I'm asked by, I got 4 kids, and when I ask by my kids or any other kids, sometimes I do, little talks to high schools and stuff like that, which I enjoy doing. I always tell them, your best bet is to get a technical degree if you can. And of course, if you hate it, you shouldn't, because probably that's what will ensure for you the best chances of making a living and putting food on your family's table. And that's really I think a key. And maybe that's because I come from a blue collar modest background, and people who weren't educated, but they were self-educated and were really smart and had great lives. But I think that that's really a very important thing that people need to keep in mind, because it's going to get very competitive. If you see what's happening with the pandemic right now, where the rate of unemployment might go dramatically high, jobs are going to be incredibly competitive. So the best kids can do, the best they can do for themselves. It's hard to find a solution that works for everybody and that's fair for everybody. So my only advice to kids is do the best you can do for yourself while thinking about others too, because if you care about others, if you do well for yourself, then you can help others. But if you don't do well for yourself, then it's much harder to help others.
Now, I have 3 final lightning round questions for you, sir. So here we go. They're coming in hot. Question number 1, what is your favorite old school music jam? Like, do you like a certain artist, a certain musician? Do you have a certain artist that you really get into?
Well, I'm a jazz guy, so if it's anybody, it'll be somebody like John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Stan Getz, someone like that.
Okay. Next question for you. You've been successful for a long time, but you still look like you're 25. Okay, but you've been successful for a long time. So, what's your routine look like there, sir? When you were building your first company, and as you were growing your different brands and different companies over the years, I mean, you put together one day of success and then another and another. And were you perfect? No, but I mean, you really probably had some sort of power routine that you developed. How did you organize the first 4 hours of your day when you were growing Borland? And what time would you wake up every day?
So that's actually a very interesting question. I sleep in shifts, so I sleep in 3-hour shifts, just like on a watch system on a boat. So I'll sleep 3 hours, then work for 2 hours, sleep 3 hours, and then work for 2 hours, and then if I have an opportunity, I'll sleep for another hour. I take a power nap or something like that. So that kind of gets the people I work with to think that I'm continually on deck. And I've been known to sleep under my desk if I had a desk. And so that's how I do it.
Now, are you,
my routine.
Philippe, I want to ask you, are you intentional about this? Matt Mullenweg, who built WordPress, talked about this. Thomas Edison wrote about this idea. They called it polyphasic sleeping. Are you into Is this a plan? Are you into polyphasic sleeping?
Oh, absolutely right. Yeah, this is polyphasic sleep. And so you count the number of phases of sleep you're in, and you try not to slow to another one so that you don't wake up groggy, and then you start again. So when you talk about my routine always starts with a workout, which is either a CrossFit style workout or a yoga workout. But the first thing I do is always working out. There's no question. That's like a religion. And part of my routine is the last thing I do before going to sleep is I look at myself seriously and see what I've done today to make a difference. And can I reprioritize what I'm going to do tomorrow? I think this constant reprioritization is part of my process every day. And so from the morning workout to getting ready before bed for the next day, I don't start thinking about the next day when I get up. I've already been doing that. And so my morning workout allows me to clear my mind and be ready for whatever comes. You know, I live in Santa Cruz, so I'm lucky enough that I can go surfing or something like that instead of the CrossFit and all that. So, I will eventually do that.
You absolutely are blowing my mind, and I feel significantly less intelligent as a result of having talked to you. And you didn't mean to do that, but you're next level. Okay, my final question for you, because when we look, I want to just picture your workplace. Do you work out of your house, sir, or where's do you have like a man cave that you work out of? Where are you inventing from?
No, we have a company. We're in downtown Santa Cruz, and because we're Medtech and an essential business, we can actually use our facilities. But every one of our team members is allowed to work from home, and so we try to mitigate everything. So I tend to do both. And, I'm fortunate enough to live in Santa Cruz where, I don't drive cars. I just bike to the office and bike back. And so that's part of, a way to clear your mind and get some fitness routine. We're lucky in Santa Cruz to have bike paths everywhere, so it's pretty safe. And so I'll work from where I have to work. And sometimes, of course, if I'm working in the middle of the night, which I do, I work from home. But usually I don't like offices as much. I don't have an office. I tend to work on my kitchen table.
Really?
Yeah, I do that, and it's a whole thing, and especially now with a lot of video like Google Hangouts or Zoom and stuff like that. No one can tell where you're working from, but a lot of times it's from, my kitchen is fairly large, and it's also the living room. So I tend to do that, and I think I'm very lucky to have a partner or wife who does that too. So we have no problems having, our gear on our table and et cetera. And most people would say, oh, you're invading the room, but I'm fortunate enough to have a partner that has the same philosophy.
Can you see the water from your home?
What's that?
Can you see water from your home? Do you have like a water feature, like maybe out your kitchen window, like in the backyard? Do you have like a waterfall, or what can you see out your kitchen window, or does that even matter?
We live on the Santa Cruz Harbor, so I can see the ocean and I can see sailboats.
Unbelievable.
It's nice, and we have a bird feeder and lots of birds coming through, and lots of sailboats. So we're very fortunate to live in a very special place with the Santa Cruz Harbor. It's a small harbor, but it's a working harbor, so there's fishing boats and all that. So at every time of the day or the night, at 3 or 4 in the morning, there's people going out fishing for salmon, crabs, whatever, squid or whatever. And so it's kind of a great community.
Sir, final question for you. I'll sneak one in here. We have about 500,000 listeners, many of which have gone in the last month and a half. They've gone from scared for their own survival to kind of annoyed almost that they've been in hiding for 4 or 5 weeks, and now the numbers of the projections of projected deaths are going down, and some people are pessimistic of the projections, some people are optimistic. What words of encouragement or fact-driven advice would you have for the listeners as we're heading into what hopefully is the beginning of the end of this coronavirus lockdown?
Well, number one is to stay healthy, and to stay healthy, you gotta. The only solution is to strengthen your immune system, which means healthier diet, sleep more, sleep better, not maybe more, and move and work out. That's the number one, because if health is gone, everything else is gone. But after that, I think it's really important to follow the Darwinian approach, which is, how has the world changed, and how can I adapt my business to how the world has changed? And sometimes it's very difficult. It's almost impossible. But I think it's very important, because if you have a business that's headed for the wall, you better make a 90-degree turn if that's necessary. Because if you're in the movie theater business, you got to find a solution. You got to invent Netflix or something like that, like Marc Randolph and Reed Hastings or something like that. Because it's going to take a long while for people to get back into movie theaters, and the same thing is for cruise ships and stuff like that. So you got to invent something new, and you got to renew yourself and adapt. I think health and adaptation are really the key elements that are the most important to small businesses, and it's really a challenging environment. But like anything else, life will continue. The sun will rise again, and there will be opportunities. And for the small business and the entrepreneur, this is where you can make a difference.
Philippe, thank you so much for investing your time. I know time is your most important asset, and I really do appreciate every moment that you've been with us on today's show. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, sir.
Well, same here. Have a nice afternoon.
And now, without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom!
Boom. Boom. Boom.
What if you could gain access to download each and every book that I've ever written for free?
Well, that'd be terrible, because I don't like you.
Okay, we're making a big assumption here. But assuming that you do like me and you like the Thrive Time Show, you can now go to thrivetimeshow.com/free-resources. That's thrivetimeshow.com/free-resources to download each and every book that I've ever written for free. You can download the ebook version of each and every book that I've ever written for free.
Clay, I just want to chime in here real quick. I don't like you or capitalism. I feel like we should all get free stuff.
Well, I am in the process of explaining where you can get free stuff. And you can now also download all the helpful infographics. There's infographics on Firing 101, the perfect hiring system, the principles from Ray Dalio, Internet Marketing 101, the Lead Bin Management System, Managing Humans 101, Logo Creation 101, Why Google Loves WordPress, Time Management 101. We also have an incredible infographic about the importance of calling your leads often, because the average person no longer answers their phone unless they are called multiple times and unless they receive a text from you. We also have the importance of file nomenclature 101, sales lead conversion 101, and much, much more. And it's all available for you to download for free right now by going to thrivetimeshow.com.
Are you suggesting that I should have to move my body?
Yes.
This is for free. Isn't there a way you could just beam it? I mean, why do I have to move my body?
Because-
typing causes me anxiety.
Whatever.
Which is why I would never go to thrivetimeshow.com.
Come on.
/free-resources. I would never go to thrivetimeshow.com /free-resources.
All right, let me clarify. If you have the capacity to move your fingers, go to thrivetimeshow.com /free-resources to download an ebook version of every single Amazon best-selling book I've ever written and all the infographics that have the power to change your life.